Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be about how to get your champion generator running when it won't start. Now there's lots of videos out there and there's all kinds of causes, from valve adjustment to low oil to bad sensors to, you know, there's tons of stuff. Is the carburetor gummed up? So I've had trouble with this thing running several times and it's been super frustrating. When it's running, it's awesome. I've run my house on it a couple times. It runs my welders. So I'm very, very happy with this generator when it's running, but getting it started sometimes is a pain in the butt. And I didn't understand a couple of things and I want to share those with you because now that I understand them, it's going to be easy fix and easy to get this thing running. So let me share that with you. Let's get started. Once you understand how this works, this section of troubleshooting your generator will be easy. Now, this is only for troubleshooting dual fuel generators, so propane or gasoline, right? So you've got this switch here, which you can turn your gasoline valve on right here and run on gasoline, or you can flip the switch over here like that and then run it on propane. And you can turn that and that turns on your propane and allows your propane connection right here to flow into your generator, okay? But we're gonna start on gas. It'll always run on propane, but only about half the time when I go to start it will it actually start and run on gasoline. So all you have to understand about this is how this interfaces as far as switching between propane and gasoline, because you can't have both running into the carburetor at the same time. I mean, you have a gas tank that's full and you want to run it on propane, you flip the switch over and it just runs on propane, right? It's not running on gas. Well, what happens in the carburetor to keep gasoline from going into the carburetor? Let me show you. Well, let's come around the back here. And I don't know if this is common to this is my only dual fuel champion I have. I have 3 champion generators. The other 2 are straight gas models, but this is the only dual fuel one I have. Now, gasoline, of course, comes in through this hose right here, this skinny hose right here. And we can look at it from the side over here. And so this is what comes from the gas tank. And this bigger hose is the propane hose. So this is your LPG, and this is what feeds your carburetor with propane gas right here. So let's come back around here, and both of those go down to the carburetor, but you'll notice that the propane comes in high right here. The gasoline hose goes down lower into the carburetor. Now, just for reference, this is probably obvious to you, but this is the air filter here. This is the air intake. Air flows through here, picks up propane or fuel, or I should say propane or gasoline, and then it takes it through this intake here into the top of the head here. And then of course there's your spark plug, and this is the head and the engine right here. And so that's what allows your internal combustion to happen, obviously. But the thing that separates the gas mode from the propane mode is this little thing that sticks off the bottom right here. Now, if you're an old motorcycle guy like me and you're used to taking carburetors apart, or you've been just taking small engine carburetors apart, you know that there's jets that can clog up. I've literally had this thing apart a dozen times trying to clean the jets, but they've never been gummed up, ever, ever, ever. And so I get it back together, and most of the time it starts running after that. But I'm going to show you what happens. It all has to do with this thing that sticks down right here, this little cylinder, this little silver cylinder thing right here. And you'll notice, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it has a little wire coming off right here, and that wire goes over to the switch on the front, and I'm going to show you that in a second here. So what happens here is when you want to run it on gasoline mode, we're on gasoline mode right here, and you turn the power on, you're going to hear a little click. I'm going to put the camera right down here so you can hear the click. Okay, so all I did was turn this switch on right here, and that little click happened. So I'm going to take it off. We're going to do it again. Click. So it's a real subtle click, but you can definitely hear it. And it's not this click of the switch, it's a click back here. So I'm going to turn it off. We're going to do it one more time. Now, I got my mechanic stethoscope just to make sure, and put it in my ears and flip the switch, put my mechanic stethoscope right there on that, and it's very, very loud. So that is definitely where the sound's coming from. Now, and so what happens inside here is there's a little electromagnet that moves a needle valve up and down, okay? So when it's energized, it pulls it down. And so what that does is that allows gasoline to flow into the carburetor from the bottom, just like a regular carburetor. The Venturi effect of the air going through the carburetor sucks gas up from the bottom, from the bowl, right? And so when your electromagnet isn't strong enough, or your battery's not strong enough for the electromagnet to pull that down to allow fuel to flow into the carburetor, then it's just not going to run on gasoline, okay? And it's definitely not going to pull start. Now, when we switch this switch off, you don't hear a noise, but it does reset, and what happens is the little spring inside pushes that needle valve up and it blocks the hole. Okay, now gasoline can't get into the carburetor. So now propane, it's going to try to pull through this hose right here. And so if you hook your propane up to it, now it's going to run on propane but won't run on gasoline. Okay, but where's the switch that makes that? How does it know whether it's on propane mode or gas mode? And that's right here. At least on this generator, it's right here. And I've seen this here, and I was like, well, what is this? This is dumb. This little switch right here. Okay, so when you close this switch, let's turn the gas off so we can actually turn the propane mode on. Okay, now we can turn the propane mode on, but what's happening is this is getting pushed back. Click. Okay, now when we turn the switch on, so now it's in propane mode. Okay, effectively we're holding the switch down just like this was closed, right? But we're going to hold it down. Now we're going to flip the switch. No click. Okay, so that means that little needle valve is stuck up inside by the spring and it's not being held down. So if your generator's running on propane but won't run on gas, you got to kind of troubleshoot this. So get your mechanic's stethoscope out or just listen. So we're going to let this off here. And when I let this off, we should hear a little click. Click. Hopefully that's coming out in the camera. But this is real simple troubleshooting. And you can just tell by the sound what it's supposed to be doing now, and be able to troubleshoot it. So if you're not hearing a click, check your voltage on your battery. You may not have enough volts here. My battery was dead from sitting for a year. It was at 4 volts. So I recharged it. Fortunately, it's taking a charge, and we're going to try to start it here in a minute on this battery. I haven't tried to start it yet. Now, traditionally, this thing's been a pain in the butt to start by hand. We're going to see if we can start it by hand. So I'm going to turn the gas on. And I like to leave the gas on for a few minutes on this one. Oh, and a quick note here. If this switch is off, if it's not in run mode, if it's in off mode like that right there, and you turn this on, it will not energize the solenoid down there. Okay, so this has to be in on mode. In fact, I'm going to you can see this switch is on now. It's getting power. I'm going to turn this switch on, and you'll hear it click right down here. Click. Okay, so both these conditions have to be met. That needs to be on, that needs to be on there, and there needs to be enough voltage. That switch needs to be working. All right, let's see if it starts. Okay, so here's the battery voltage before start, 12.5. Now we'll start it and see what it's charging at. Okay, we'll do a couple of priming pulls. Okay, so let's take a peek at this solenoid. I'm going to take it apart for two reasons. One, to show you, but also we've moved from 7,500 feet down to 5,500 feet. And I'm going to put it's kind of running rough. You probably noticed that in the earlier video. I'm going to put the old factory jet back in for standard elevation. So and just see if it runs better. So let's get this thing apart here real quick. This is pretty easy. There's 2 bolts in here that hold the carburetor in place, but in order to get to those easily, you have to pull these 8 millimeters out. Now, personally, I look at these disassembly videos kind of like I do unboxing videos. I can't stand them, but mostly I'm doing this for my own future reference. If I have to do this in the future and I'm like, wait, how did this go back together? What hose did I have where? This will help me. So this hose comes out right here. This vent hose comes out right here as well. This little 10 millimeter right here is a little bolt on the back. It's a real pain in the butt to get to. There's a little gasket back here. Just be careful of it. So you may be able to get the solenoid off the bottom here by taking these 2 Phillips screws out now that you can get to everything. But there's a lot of tension right here. So what I've done in the past is I've just loosened these little clips that drop down into the housing right here. And they just kind of lift up. They kind of hold everything together. And there's one there. There's one right up over here. And that one comes out. Okay, now this will all come down. Let's go ahead and loosen the LPG hose and get it out of the way. Okay, now that the LPG hose is out of the way, we can clamp the fuel line. And now we can take this fuel line off. We'll have a little bit of gas leak out of it. That's expected. and we'll have some leak out of the carb too. Now on top of the carb, there's a tiny, tiny spring wire that's super small and super fragile. In fact, it already popped off from me jacking with it. And that's a return wire. Otherwise, we're just gonna move this to throttle closed, and then you just pop this one up out. And so those two are free. And now the carburetor should come out as long as we have a little slack right there. Okay, good deal. We got a couple Phillips screws here. Let's take this solenoid off here. Okay, now on the bottom of this carb, there's this is a 14 millimeter, and I've already loosened it, so you have to loosen that, unthread it to get to your main jet. Okay, now once you get this out, just inspect your O-ring there. This looks like it might be a Vidin or nitrile O-ring. It looks like it's in good shape, so we're not going to replace that. This actually, see those holes there? Make sure those are clean. You should be able to blow in from the top. Use some brake cleaner or some carb cleaner. Make sure you wear safety goggles so you don't spray brake cleaner in your eyes. That sucks. I've done that a few times. But all those holes should be clear. So just look at it and make sure there's no varnish or gumming while you're there, right? That holds the bowl in. Make sure you get the orientation right here. It looks like this screw faces this way. And then we'll take the bowl off. Now when you take it apart, there's a gasket there. Make sure to just stand that up. And also be super careful of this little rod right here, because this little rod is what holds your float in. And so this little rod will slide out and fall out and disappear if you're not careful. So keep your eye on that while you're doing this. When your grandma said cleanliness is next to godliness, she was talking about jetting carburetors. So keep your stuff clean, keep your fingers clean, make sure there's no crud on them. Now, I've picked a slot screwdriver that's narrow, that's super narrow right here, okay? Not too wide. This one's too wide. It's got this flare right there for strength. This one doesn't. And so it's wide enough just to fit in the slot right there, okay? And so don't get these jets mixed up, okay? So this is the jet I'm gonna put in. The jet I'm gonna take out, I'm gonna set over here. So you can just look up inside there, you can see the slot there. Go ahead and put your slot on it, unscrew it. Now you'll get all excited, you wanna turn this over and dump the jet out, and you should do that, but that's when you gotta be careful of this little cross rod. So just put your finger on it, just hold on to that so it doesn't. Okay, and there's the old jet. All right, now before you put the new jet in, and this is what you learn from doing dirt bikes, is make sure it's patent, make sure it has a hole in it. So look down it, spray some brake cleaner or some carb cleaner down it, make sure it's clear, make sure you can blow through it, make sure you can see through it. This is a big enough jet that you can see through. We're just gonna drop it in there. We're gonna carefully seat it by hand. Make sure it's threading, make sure it seats. And just put a little tweak on it, just a little tweak, nothing more than that. All right, now, this generator's been sitting in storage for about a year, so I haven't been running it out on the property in the dirt and the dust, but it's still pretty clean. I like to clean this gasket around here and just make sure, that little O-ring, and make sure it's nice and clear. And then we'll take this and we'll put it on the correct direction. And before you torque it down, just look around. Make sure it looks nice and even, that it's not canted or out of place, because you don't want to be cranking on this with that crooked. This is pretty soft metal here. Can't even call it metal. Okay, and I'm just going to snug it just till it stops. That's it. Okay, we got our new jet in. Now let's look at the solenoid. Okay, I relabeled it. Champion 100155, that's the model. High altitude, I scratched out standard, put high altitude jet. So over 5,500 feet. We're right at 5,500 feet, but it's just running rough. And I think with this regular altitude jet, it'll run better. Well, we're gonna find out. Okay, so let's look closely at this. So here's the solenoid. See that little needle sticking out the top, little copper colored thing? All right, so it's tapered. It has a little point at the top, just like kind of like a fuel bowl jet, like you'd see on a regular dirt bike or gasoline engine. So that's what goes up inside this hole in the bottom of the carb and plugs off the gasoline, so that propane, it'll only run on propane, it won't suck gasoline at the same time. Okay, so let's activate this and just make sure it works. Okay, so over here in our generator, our battery's still hooked up. We're gonna switch it to on, not to start, and then we're gonna turn this switch on, and let's see what happens to the solenoid, to the needle. Okay, here goes, switch on. So you see how that pulls away, and that allows fuel to flow up from the bowl into the carburetor, so it'll run on gasoline. Now I'm going to So this is switch on, right? Now I'm going to switch it off, and there's a little spring inside that pushes it up. So, okay, so when you turn the switch on, it's an electromagnet that pulls it down, right? A solenoid that pulls it down. And so that has to be energized all the time. Okay, so this can fail. If this, if your generator will run on propane but it won't run on gas at all, you can tap on this. You can bang on it and try to get it loose. You can take it apart and make sure it moves freely. So I'm going to de-energize it. Okay, so the power's off. It should move in and out. Okay, you're pushing against the spring right there, just like that. So that should move easily, right? And then so when you energize it, you can just test this yourself. Energize it, make sure it goes down. Turn it off, make sure it goes up. That's working. But if your generator will run on propane but won't run on gas, this is something easy that you can test and make sure it's working. Now, the quick solution, of course, is, you get your generator out, it's been sitting for a year, and you go to pull, you go to get it running, and the battery's charged, but it just won't start on gasoline. Just tap on that with a hammer. Tap, 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 tap a few times. Some people say that if you're tapping on it while you're trying to start it, that may help as well, because some of the vibration may help break it loose. That may keep you from having to take it apart. Okay, but if it doesn't run on gas, but it'll run on propane, go ahead and take it apart and make sure it works and make sure it energizes. If it doesn't, maybe there's a problem with the switch, maybe there's a problem with the solenoid here. You can buy these parts, if your switch fails, you can replace the switch. This switch has to work too. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that we're pushing the propane switch on. Okay, so I'm going to leave this switch on and that switch on, but now we're going to pretend that we're going to turn it on to propane. Okay, so when you slide this propane switch over, it's going to push the switch in. When you slide this over, it's not supposed to run on gas, it's supposed to run on propane, just like that, right? Okay, so let's see what happens to the solenoid. So right now it's in gas mode because the electromagnet's pulling it down, and I'm going to push the propane switch and see it go up. Okay, so that just de-energized the electromagnet. So that's another little thing you have to check to make sure that's working. Okay, so I'm going to push it and release it again, and let's just look at it. So I'm going to push it now. So now it blocks the flow of gasoline. Now it'll run on propane, and then I'm going to let it off, and now it'll run on gasoline again. Okay, so it's in gasoline mode there. When you switch this over, it pushes that in. That's propane mode. Okay, cool. Okay, and while you have it out, just go ahead and clean it, make sure it looks good. Make sure everything turns easily. Now what I like to do is take some brake cleaner or carb cleaner and spray inside the main jet up through here, and there's a little brass orifice right there in the middle, and of course that's where the fuel comes up from the fuel bowl. And so I'll spray some up there just to make sure I have brake cleaner come out right there, and that's nice and clean. I'll also spray it through the fuel intake right here, because this is where fuel comes in and then goes down into the carburetor bowl. This is the propane inlet right here, so I'll spray in there. I'll usually spray these other jet holes just to make sure they look good. And I see a little bit of crud in the corner right there. I'm going to get some spray and clean that out. And I see a little bit right in there too, just a tiny, tiny bit. And then of course this is just like any other carburetor. It works on Venturi effect, right? Venturi is just where a stream of air passes over a small orifice, and it creates a vacuum and pulls something through that little orifice. Well, your engine's a pump, right? So when you go to pull start it or electric start, right, the engine starts pumping and pulling air through here. So that air that's rushing through here flows over the top of that little brass orifice inside there. And what's at the bottom of that brass orifice? A bunch of gasoline. And so as long as this needle is retracted, that air flowing over the top will actually suck gasoline up through there and into the carburetor here, and then it'll flow into the engine and allow the engine to run. So that's just Venturi effect. It's real simple. This is a real simple carburetor as far as that goes. Okay, let's make sure we orient this right, and then we'll get this little solenoid back inside here. So that little needle valve just goes right up inside there, like that. The little O-ring will make a seal, and I try to do this as evenly as I can, just to make sure that that O-ring doesn't get crooked there. Now after all that drama, let's roll it outside and see if we can get it going again. And I like to turn on the fuel petcock and just let the fuel run in there for a minute or two and not get too aggressive about starting it. So we'll come back and start it in just a second. A couple priming pulls. Okay, and obviously you want to check for leaks, now that it's running, feel around the carburetor where you worked on it, make sure there's no leaks, make sure it's dry, because you want to find that out sooner than later. And listen to it, it's running good. It's running so smooth. It was running so rough with that high altitude jet in it. Okay, it seems to be running great. I couldn't be happier right now. You know, I tend to run it, just let it run out of gas, run the carburetor dry. So I'll shut the fuel off, and in a couple minutes it'll just run out of gas, and it sucks the carburetor dry. Of course, you don't want to do that with a 2-stroke engine, but it's okay with a 4-stroke because it gets the lubrication from the bottom of the crankcase, right? So don't forget to shut your switches off though when you're done. So oftentimes, if I can see how something works and I understand how it works, then when it comes time to troubleshoot it, it's usually a breeze. So I made this video not just for you guys, but also selfishly for me, because if in 2, 3, 5 years this thing doesn't start, I'm going to reference back to this video and go, oh yeah, let me check this system out, and hopefully it'll help me solve it. All right, well, I enjoyed making this video. It was a lot of fun. Hope it helped you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.